We are back, folks, for round two of our live coverage here on this fine Thursday, mid-July. Big 12 Media Days going on in the heart of Texas. So we appreciate you being here again. Support the channel. Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. Same shopping experience, and doesn't cost you a penny. Check out the previous live stream earlier today with Frogs Insider Melissa Triebwasser talking TCU. We also had on just a number of contributors, Jeff Sharon from UCF and the SB Nation site there. So again, check out the earlier live stream. We'll be back tomorrow on Friday with more from Big 12 Media Days as they wrap up on just a little bit later today. But we got Jason Watkins on the line, College Football Hall of Fame podcast. Of course, Jason makes our show work every Wednesday on the Oklahoma Channel Sooners Live as well. But College Football Hall of Fame podcast is your destination to track everything that Jason is doing. Jason, what's going on today?
Oh, man, what's going on, man? We're just got back from the stadium over there, just hanging out, thinking about going and hitting that pool here in a little bit.
Very nice. Well, I won't keep you too long because, yeah, I got to believe it's a bit toasty down there.
It is, and it's humid. So it's, a little different from the heat that we've been going through most of it. So not too bad, though. We've been enjoying it. It's been kind of eye-opening, some of the stuff that you're hearing there at the media days. A lot of, just a lot of stuff where it almost feels like Oklahoma and Texas are already kind of outsiders. There was some glad handing that kind of happened with Commissioner Yormark there for that first, his little spiel at the first of it. But it seems as though everybody seems to be ready to see him go on down the road to the SEC, and I think they're ready to go too.
Well, that's what I was curious about, is the vibe in the building, the line of questioning. Of course, one of the big storylines for this conference is, of course, continuing to expand and realign. And Brett Yormark made the comments that I thought were quite amusing. I know that he's trying to play both sides of it, but he said in one statement, hey, we've got a plan. We want to execute it. And he was obviously talking about expansion. Then 2 sentences later, he's telling us, hey, if we've got to stay with the number of teams that we have currently, we're fine with that. It's perfect. So I don't know how both can be true.
His way of moving, for this last 11 months, what has shown you that be the case? That 12 is where he wants to be. I don't think there's any way that's the case, but I could be wrong.
Brent Venables and players hit the podium. I did not catch what Oklahoma players were selected for media days.
You had Danny Stutzman there. Dylan Gabriel was there. Those are the two main guys that I saw running around. I know there was a few other guys as well. So it's but I honestly got there and Coach Venables, and then the big story from us for yesterday was obviously Mike Gundy was kind of taking his shots at Oklahoma again. This is the second year in a row that he's gone on, and he puts off everything that's been going on with everything that's been going on with the realignment and no more bedlam and everything, he puts that all squarely on Oklahoma because they moved to the SEC. And, we had our coach Roybal, who's also on the show with me all the time. He asked him yesterday if he would be willing to play it as a non-conference game. And essentially he kicked the can down, or well, I shouldn't say he kicked the can down the road. He basically said no, that they don't want to play it, and that if the game was going to still go on, it would be because Oklahoma, was still there. But since they moved to the SEC and basically didn't drag OSU with them, they don't want to play the game anymore. I think it's fair to say that it's fair to assume that the real reason he doesn't want to play him is because he's 3-16 against them. Because for all the talk about buying out of scheduled games and stuff like that with these FCS opponents or whatever, I don't think that there's any way that would be a problem for either school with the money that it generates when you play Bedlam. So, of course, we asked Coach Venables this morning about it, and he essentially passed it over to Joe Castiglione, and said, I'm not really in charge of the schedule, but if it's up to me, yeah, we're going to play it. Essentially saying that. But he was a lot more grown up about it, I would say, than was Coach Gundy. But that's, anyway.
I don't mind because it's a rivalry. I don't mind because there is a situation where two schools have moved on to another conference that
sure.
that coaches, athletic directors are going to be, first of all, they're going to be put off by those schools leaving. Number two, they're going to take a stand for their conference. I have no issue with that. However, yes. Let's all understand that if Oklahoma State was offered an SEC invitation, they would be going to the SEC as well.
Exactly.
So let's understand
that's the point, and that's the reason that we're asking. And before we even asked the question, Coach Roybal asked the question about would you be willing to do that, and it was an immediate no. But before that, somebody else there in the audience had asked about, what do you think? Are you looking forward to this last one, or is it? Are you going to miss the game? Kind of stuff. It was somebody else, and I don't even know who it was, to be honest with you. But they were asking questions about whether or not if he was looking forward to it, what he was looking forward to in the season, and he went into a little spiel, but then immediately was like, and let's just make this clear that we're not playing Oklahoma because Oklahoma decided to leave for the SEC and the money. So it's just and he's done this on more than one occasion. He loves to point everything towards OU, acting like, yeah, they wouldn't have taken that. And to me, I feel like it is sour grapes about that, because he would have absolutely wanted to go to the SEC and get, that payday that, that they're talking about, and more opportunities to compete at the highest level than what, they all love the Big 12 right now, but you love the one you're with. And I get that, and they should love and listen, I think that Brett Yormark's doing a great job. I really do. I think that when you contrast him versus George Kliavkoff in the Pac-12, he's doing a really good job, so I don't think it's necessarily, I get it that they're still happy about the Big 12. I mean, you should be happy. You're alive and well, at least for the time being. So you should be happy about that. In the end, though, I don't know how much it was that I know they just dropped another couple of million or whatever from Boone Pickens' estate or whatever onto the program. So they can act like they don't really care about having the game or the money that it generates, but I would tell you that the money is significant that it generates. So, why you wouldn't want to play that game? It's just, to me, it seems like there's one reason for that, Mark. It's one reason. He doesn't like getting his butt kicked in it more times than not,
Way more times than not.
Way more times than not. 3-16. And it's Oklahoma State is on the bad end of 92, 19, and 7. So it's yeah.
Got Jason Watkins here. College Football Hall of Fame podcast is the platform. Get on over there. It's right here on YouTube, College Football Hall of Fame podcast. When are you going live or dropping any video content over there next?
We'll be out probably. I'll probably be doing it. We'll be traveling back tomorrow to where we're at, but we're probably looking at. I'll probably be doing some stuff over the weekend for sure. I'll announce something for sure tomorrow. We may have something more this evening. I'm just kind of waiting to see kind of what goes off. We're waiting on this Jackson commitment. We believe he's going to be. There's a chance that you're going to end up seeing. This is a big commitment for a 4-star defensive lineman prospect that looks like he's going to be coming to Oklahoma as well. So I think you're kind of waiting to see if Jaden Jackson's going to do that. We're going to find out. I know that commitment is coming up live, as Perfect Cracker said in there. So I'm a lot of people that are thinking a lot of that. Yeah, and I love that. 19 wins, 100 years. So it is what it is. And again, it's fine if they don't want to play it. Just quit talking crap all the time, like you're, just pointing it in the direction of Oklahoma. And he's done this the last 2 years at media days. Make sure that he gets in there and just trashes them as much as they possibly can. And he did it to Texas a little bit. He was stepping on them a little bit in some of the, around the way they've got all the radio stations and some of the other, small TV stations and things like that were there. And he spent. Who was that? I think he was there with. It wasn't KREF. It was somebody else. But anyway, he sat there and did 30 minutes with them, and he was teeing off on both. So, I get it, and it's fine to take up for your conference. I understand that, but let's not relax, dude. You are waiting that invitation yourself. So let's not be crazy.
Other than the Bedlam history, and Mike Gundy using that term, Bedlam is history. Other than that, it is history. It is history. One more game to play, but it's basically in the books, and Oklahoma's moving on. What else did Brent Venables talk about? Obviously, he's got to be talking about a defense that needs to improve, and he's already basically promised that it's going to be much better.
Absolutely. And I think that that was the first thing I asked is this, how much did the transfer portal play into that? And the way that you're recruiting some of these guys that are, the high level, high 4 and 5-star guys, particularly on the defensive line. And he said, that they accepted that challenge when they got the job. They knew that there was going to be, and I believe it's 90 out of 123 kids on the roster, over 90 of them are new to the program, starting with either last year or what is that? There's 0% chance that OSU prompted dropping Bedlam. What does that mean?
I think basically what Levi's saying there is that Oklahoma's moving to the SEC, therefore they're kind of moving on from that series. And
that's not true either. That's a 0% truth to that. They said that they would play it. They still will have openings for non-conference. I know that's been openly discussed as well at length. This isn't a new subject that we're talking about. So you think that they don't talk about that? I mean, we're talking about 2 schools that are 80 miles away. And there's more people than not want the game to happen. I think that you would have more Oklahoma State fans that don't want it to happen because they're sick of losing the game just like he is. But there's a lot of Oklahoma State fans that think it's cowering. And Cody would tell you that. I'm sure he said that to you last night. He feels like that they're cowering to them. And he doesn't want to do that. He wants to see them continue to act like it matters to him. Because it should matter. But that being said, that's not where we're at, and that's not a true statement right there. They did prompt it. They didn't want to do it just because it gave them an out to do it. But I get that part, but that's not the deal. Anyway, as we were saying about the rest of it, over 90 players that were not in the program starting last season when Coach Venables took over. I mean, that's how much turnovers there's been. So for all of this talk about, the Colin Cowherds of the world and stuff like that, saying that they had a ton of that they had a ton of talent on that team still, that it wasn't gutted. I mean, we all know better than that. You know, there was over 44% turnover during that last year. At this point, it's like 85, 86% turnover since Lincoln left the program. So they're doing the things that they have to do. I think that you still have some youth as far as the recruits that are coming in this year. You've got Peyton Bowen, who's a 5-star safety. You've got PJ Adebawari, who's a 5-star defensive lineman, the tackle edge guy, that you would expect that they could possibly see quite a bit of time. I was thinking of guys like Makari Vickers, who could see some time at the corner position, maybe in some nickel coverage, things like that. Samuel Omosigo, he's another one of those players that you would expect could possibly get some of that time, because the linebacking core is a bit thin. You know, the guys that they have, they expect big things from them. Guys like Danny Stuffsman, Jaron Kanak, you know, Kobe McKenzie, those guys. There's some guys that look like they're going to step up and like they understand the system quite a bit too. But that was one thing that he talked about too, was that changing systems to what they did, you know, it was tough for them at times. And you could tell that what really was, by the end of the season or by the fourth quarter, they were running out of gas. Yeah. Is it Gumby's quote, we're signed up through 37. We're not obligated to change for them. He did say something along those lines. Is he signed up through 37? I think that's debatable. I tend to doubt that he's got. The bottom line is he acted like he didn't have, he was saying all this kind of stuff, and then he was turning around and saying things like, well, but we don't really have any, I don't really have control over that. I don't buy that for 1 second. You know, he's the guy that's got the longest tenure in that athletic department. He's got all the power in that schedule. He's got the revolving contract and everything else.
Well, let's see what we got here. If we go to future schedules.
Okay.
And what do we got for Oklahoma State? Starting in 24, they're booked up 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Okay, they've got openings starting in 29. Now, probably what he means, and this only holds true for 2029, is they've got their big game. You know, they obviously in 2029, they've got openings. They've got one opening at least. Well, they've got one opening, and they've got Alabama. So they've got a big opponent, but they're in 2030. I just see Tulsa, if this is accurate. So he may have been skipping a year because they've got everything. And again, he's not being completely transparent about that. They have openings. He means if they're going to schedule one big opponent every year. And so he's basically saying we've got Nebraska, Arkansas, Colorado, and before that, Alabama. But they're in 2030.
But that Colorado, what happens if Colorado goes back to the Big 12? You know?
Yeah. And you can also schedule more than one difficult opponent non-conference. Other teams do that.
Listen, a lot of time, and that's the thing. If you really fancy yourself as a contender for the college football playoff and for the national championship, which, you know, I think that's kind of laughable, but if that's what you really believe, then why don't you want to play an SEC school right in your backyard that you could, you know, that would pad your resume for getting a good seating there, you know?
Absolutely. And we'll continue this conversation. Joey reminding me here, we've got free keychains, Voice of College Football keychains for everyone. Just go to the link that was dropped in the chat there. It's topqualityshirts.com, and you see the rest of the link there. It's in the chat. We'll display the keychains at another time in the show because we've got Jason here, and we want Jason to be able to hit the pool and follow commit announcements and all that other good stuff. Little work, little play. It can all get done today.
Hey, it's been a good time, even though we've had the network issues we have and some of the stuff that's going on. I mean, we've had a lot of fun. You know, we got to meet a former Sooner last night. He played for the coach here in Dallas at Skyline. You know, got to talk to a lot of people. It's just been a lot of fun up here, and it's a good week for the Hall of Fame media crew. So we've been excited about it.
Awesome. Well, always good to stir things up between OU and Oklahoma State, this is going to be one of our last chances to do so. So,
yeah, really, this is the last one forever as far as Gundy's concerned. I tend to wonder how long he continues to keep a stranglehold on that job when he doesn't win very much. But
how much
and
do you
now his
care about
excuse
that
is out the
series?
window too.
How much do you care about Bedlam?
I like Bedlam because I think it does elicit so much. I mean, you don't like them. You don't like them. They don't like Oklahoma. Oklahoma fans don't like them. And in some ways, it's even more prickly than the Texas series. The Texas series. Some people were saying the other night that they felt like, and I was on Jay's show, I think, and that they felt like it was there's more respect between Texas and OU. Maybe. I think that OU doesn't have a ton of respect for Texas right now because they don't win anything. They hadn't won anything since 2009, not even a conference championship. So, but that being said, I mean, they're obviously going into the SEC together. They were kind of partners in that deal, but they get lumped together a lot too. So I think that there is that, and they recruit on the same level. I think when it comes to Oklahoma State, it's little brother. It's little brother. It's Okie Light. That's what I call him all the time, is Okie Light. So, there's a little more. I like the series. I mean, I can tell you that I like it because no matter how good they are and how bad Oklahoma could be at that time, you want to see the series because you're going to probably ruin their year, and maybe help yourself a little bit. Now, as far as beating, is it a real rivalry? No, you got to win more than 19 times in 100 years. You do.
Okay.
It's not
Well,
the
you're
same
closer to the situation. You're an OU guy, and it's always funny when there are lopsided rivalries because some people just consider them to be rivalries regardless of what happens, just because
Sure.
they're in the same
Well, I'm
conference, they're
saying
in
a
the
lot of
same
people
state or
don't really
whatever the
think of it.
history is. And other people say, well, if one team dominates, it ceases to be a rivalry. For me, that's a rivalry.
Yeah.
To me,
matters to you,
Bedlam
it
is a
is.
rivalry regardless, but I'm not as close to it as you are. I do believe that if you review the landscape of college football, every state that has two major schools, they play.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm thinking of
I
everywhere
tend
across
to
the
wonder how
country.
long it's going to take for the legislature to step into this one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think at some point you're gonna realize there's a drop in revenue when it comes to that. There's a drop in hotels and things. I mean, I'm not really hotels. There's only 80 miles between them, but there's got to be money that's generated throughout the week, and it's fun for a lot of people. I think that you're going to see some legislators will probably get in there and be like, hey, these guys need to play. It's important. Because it generates TV eyes, it generates people in the stands, it generates tax money. I would say that it's something that'll work itself out. Now, as far as is it a rivalry? Is it not a rivalry? I mean, I'm just going by it's easy for an OU fan to say it's not a rivalry. I think it is a rivalry. I think it is because they've played it every year for 100 years. Every year. This is and this, to me, that's why I feel like I'm upset about it not going. What is the problem with all this realignment that's happening, Mark? In my opinion, and we've talked about this before, when it comes to like the Pac-12 and Big 12 and all that stuff, I hate it that all these changes are happening that are going to take away some of these rivalry games. As far as even in the SEC, if they don't end up going to that 3-6-6, 9-game deal, some of those games are going to go by the wayside to every other year. And I think that's ridiculous. And it's not fair to have that be the trade-off. I don't care what Nick Saban says. I think it's crap. And the thing is, there's no way to really hide. When you start looking at that first year for Oklahoma in the SEC, we talked about it. That's a murderer's row schedule. It is. Texas's schedule is a little more manageable that first year. But they do have Georgia, who could be, 3-time defending champions at that point. They could be. But, of course, they get them at home. Oklahoma has Alabama at home, but they've got road games against LSU, Auburn. in that first season. It's going to be a tough way to go. And I think that's going to be the case every week. But you're going to tell me that the Iron Bowl is going to be the only one protected when Georgia-Auburn is the oldest rivalry in the South? I think that's crazy talk. And no more Tennessee now. No more Tennessee-Alabama. I'm just talking Alabama. But no more Tennessee-Florida, because Florida and Georgia are tied at the hip, so that's always going to happen. They're going to take away the Lone Star shootout between Texas and Texas A&M again, when it's they hadn't played the thing in 12 years, and now we're going to wait again every other year to play that one again. I think it's just stupid, And I know that not every one of those schools has a major rival. When you start talking about Missouri and Arkansas, I mean, Arkansas has some rivals and stuff like that, but it's not a natural forever year rivalry. Some of them have been. The argument has been, well, those are made-up rivalries, things like that. Well, when they play it on the field every year, it does turn itself into something like that. It gets to where, you're going to play them every year. And so if you've had any kind of back and forth with them where it's been competitive, it does become a good game. Do you put it up there with the Iron Bowl? Of course not. Of course you don't. But I still feel like the more we lose these rivalries from the game, the further away we're getting from what college football is supposed to be about. And I don't like it. That part I don't like. I want to see them play the teams that they hate every, week after week after week. I want to see more of that. And I think that the rest of the country does too. That's just me, though.
I'm right there with you, Jason. Jason Watkins hosts our Oklahoma show along with myself each and every Wednesday. That's a good time each and every Wednesday on the Oklahoma channel. And catch Jason on College Football Hall of Fame podcast. It's right here on the banner. And again, Jason's a great follow on Twitter. There you see it, Birdie Man Dub, Hall of Fame College Football Podcast.
Thank you.
Definitely follow Jason. And Jason, head down to the pool. I know you got a commitment announcement to follow as well, and all sorts of other stuff to track there at Big 12 Media Day. So we appreciate you being here.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on the show again, Mark. I appreciate it.
All right, we will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We've got our guy Steve Helwick standing by from AT&T Stadium. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. We just wrapped up our day 2 of media days at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. It's the first time I've been to this event, and it's the only year we will have it in this 14-team iteration with not only BYU, Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati, but also Texas and Oklahoma. So it was a bit of a welcoming party and a farewell party at the same time for about 6 of the 14 programs involved.
You can catch Steve, everyone, at Underdog Dynasty and also Hustle Belt, as you see there on the banner, SB Nation. Steve joins us on a regular basis to break down the group of 5 and a number of storylines and games and matchups across college football each season. Steve, before I pin you down to any specific narratives or storylines, you started to set the stage for Texas, Oklahoma leaving, and the 4 schools that joined the conference here in 23. Is that the big storyline? Is that what everyone is talking about? And what are some of your thoughts and takeaways from what you've heard?
I would say that's a big storyline and what people are talking about, but also a lot of the new coaches were asked about some of the newcomers and their familiarity with BYU, Cincy, Houston, and UCF. But there was talk about the Oklahoma and Texas dialogue. I mean, the commissioner, Brett Yormark, was specifically asked yesterday, would it be a bad thing if Texas or Oklahoma won the conference, which in their final year, which he kind of laughed off in this one. But it does. Also, Steve Sarkisian was asked a question about the awkwardness of Texas in their final year of the Big 12, and he said it was not awkward for us, but said, I don't know about everyone else, but it's not for us. So there was some talk about that. I'd say the Bedlam was the pretty hot topic about Oklahoma leaving. We've heard about Gundy's Bedlam comments for quite a while now. He was asked about that. Venables was asked about that. Sounds like both of them want to keep playing the game in some capacity, but they don't want to go out of their way to schedule it. And Gundy kept saying that this is Oklahoma's fault for Oklahoma was the one who decided to join the SEC and mess up the scheduling, while Venables was just saying, I'm not in charge of our schedule. But if there's a way to make it happen, like as a fan of college football, it would be a good thing for the sport, but we're not going to go out of our ways to do it. So it's kind of sad to see such a historic rivalry die. I mean, we've had some great bedlams over the years. I think back to 2013, 2014, the Tyreek Hill punt return touchdown. 2013, I think, was where Justin Gilbert dropped the interception. Oklahoma won, then got into a BCS bowl afterward. And then 2021, just 2 years ago, where Oklahoma State had that rabid fourth quarter comeback to make the Big 12 championship game. So that's a rivalry I'm going to miss, and that was definitely one of the hot storylines today.
Now, what the coaches and players have to say versus what the fans and the media have to say, two entirely different things. Leading into Big 12 Media Days, I certainly saw enough evidence on social media that UCF, and again, we're not talking necessarily coaches and players, very optimistic, hopeful would be the kind way to say it. Arrogant would be another way to say it in regards to their chances in the Big 12. Gus Malzahn has obviously got a resume that says that he has performed better than any coach in the SEC versus Nick Saban. He came within 10 seconds of winning a BCS championship game. So you've got UCF, you've got Cincinnati, of course, with a new head coach in Scott Satterfield, Kalani Sitake with BYU, and Dana Holgorsen, who has, of course, won a conference championship and a major bowl game at West Virginia, now getting back into Power 5 play. Anything that was stated by any of them in regards to how they will match up in the first season that caught your ear?
I mean, none of the teams were picked to finish higher than eighth in the preseason poll. UCF was the highest. I mean, they released this preseason poll so everyone can just ask the coaches about it and they can have a comment on it. And most teams basically say they disregard those results. You can look how TCU was picked to finish seventh last year, and they made the college football playoff final. I'm sure Kansas State was also picked a bit lower than they finished, and they won the Big 12. Same thing with 2021 Baylor, who won it. So there was a lot of talk about dismissing the preseason polls. But one thing that a lot of coaches had in common of the new teams is the understanding of offensive and defensive line play when it comes to the Big 12. It seemed like a lot of them were satisfied with what they had with their skill positions. But when the Big 12 became a reality for these schools in September 2021, it became focusing on the trenches. Dana Holgorsen said yesterday he did a study on his team and matched them up with the other Big 12 teams. And they determined that their bodies needed to get taller, bigger, and he thinks they've accomplished that goal in the 2-year grace period that they've had going to the Big 12. So UCF, they brought in 3 transfers expected to start on the offensive line, an all-MAC first-team selection, Marcellus Marshall. They got Bula Knight, an all-Mountain West selection, so some of the best linemen in those conferences, along with an Alabama transfer and Amari Kite, who's looking to expand his playing time. So it seemed to be a lot of emphasis on the offensive and defensive lines for these new teams, and they think that success in the trenches is how they're going to compete. I mean, just look at TCU last year. They had like Steve Avila, who was one of the best interior linemen in the country. They had the offensive line, which gashed Michigan in that playoff game. You saw them getting how many yards before contact, and Ari DeMarcado just seemed to be running free all game. So you need those offensive lines in order to win the Big 12 and compete.
This is a conference that at least I consider to be the most competitive in the sport. That doesn't mean the best. That means the most competitive from top to bottom. And I think the 4 new schools only add to this. And then the potential that Oklahoma and Texas have, excuse me, of course, to be elite also will actually add to the competitive nature of the conference going forward in 2024. Where do you think this conference ranks? You know, not necessarily that you need to give us a second best, third best, fourth best, but, you know, as we continue forward with an SEC and Big Ten narrative of gobbling up the sport, you know, where do you see the Big 12 playing competitively in the landscape of college football going forward?
I think it's going to be a very competitive conference because all of these schools seem to have a very significant football culture. The fans care, which means that the athletic departments will get the money. And I mean, these stadiums are packed even in bad seasons. I mean, West Virginia didn't have the best season last year, but you could schedule a West Virginia game in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and those fans will attend and probably pack that house. I mean, there's just so much passion, I feel like, in the league where the Big 12 is set up for success. And also, the parity in the league is greater than any other conference. Dana Holgerson made a comment yesterday that there's no layups in the Big 12, and that's true. I mean, you look at Iowa State, who was their worst overall record last year, 4-8. Iowa State went into Iowa and won that game. And Iowa last year was all they had to do was beat Nebraska in order to make the Big Ten championship game. So that just shows how stacked the Big 12 was from top to bottom, especially with the rise of Kansas under Lance Leipold. So I think that the parity in the league makes this such a compelling conference to watch. I mean, almost every matchup, you can just look at it and say there's a potential, might not be likely, but there's potential for some teams to win, when you don't really see that when Alabama and Georgia are playing Vanderbilt or something. So I think that the Big 12 has that compelling stature to it. And I think that the league's in a good place going forward, even without Oklahoma, Texas. 6 different conference championship participants in the last 3 years. So we've seen a lot of parity in that regard. And I think that the 12 teams going forward are all in good shape to compete.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how these 4 new schools will compete. I think that they all have different favorable components that make them a likely candidate to compete. But when I add it all up, I look at UCF as being both in the short term and the long term the most capable, most likely, not that it's by a wide margin, but the most capable of competing. And we get a question here from Jackson concerning your outlook about the 4 new schools and who's the most ready to compete.
I can't always evaluate things on the long term, but just in the short term this year, I think that there's a reason that UCF was picked to finish highest. Of the 4 newcomers, they're the only team that's returning their starting quarterback, and John Rice Plumlee. And although there was inconsistency at times last year, he's a dynamic talent, a great dual threat quarterback, and having that security blanket of a returning coach quarterback combo really helps for the offense. Also, they are loaded with SEC transfers across their entire roster. Their receivers, Javon Baker, who was here today at Big 12 Media Day, along with Kobe Hudson. That's going to be an offense that's going to run up tempo, and they're going to pile on the points just like they have for ever since the Scott Frost era. We've seen UCF finish top 5, top 10 in scoring and yards per game so many times in that area. And also, I think that they're pretty fortified with a returning defensive line. They have 2 first-team All-AAC selections back on that defensive line, Tremont Morris-Brash and Ricky Barber. So I think that they're well-equipped to handle the trenches. So I do think that UCF short-term is probably the best slated to succeed, but UCF did let some games go last year that were pretty inexcusable. That Navy game in November where all they had to do was beat Navy in South Florida, and that conference championship game would have been in Orlando. And then the next week against South Florida, they blew nearly a 4-score lead to South Florida and needed a miracle catch by Alec Haller late in the game in order to win. So I do think that UCF needs to learn how to finish games and play complete. And I think it's going to be a bit of an adjustment period, but I think that they're best equipped to succeed in year 1 with their returning talent.
Have you made your predictions on the Big 12?
Yes, I did vote in the Big 12 preseason media poll, and my rankings were very similar to the one that was actually output. I did have Texas first overall. I just like what Texas has overall as a squad this year. They do lose Bijan Robinson, but I like a lot of their offensive talent, especially their receiving core led by Xavier Worthy. Quinn Ewers, I think, is going to make a big jump from year 1 to year 2 as the team's starting quarterback. Then defensively, they have star talent in Jalen Ford at linebacker. I think they worked the transfer portal well, getting Jalen Catalan at safety. I think that Texas just has good depth all around. And last year, Steve Sarkisian really made a jump from that 5-7 season to 8-5. And I expect to make another jump, kind of like what we saw from Texas from at the beginning of the Herman era. Herman went 7-6 and then got to the Sugar Bowl the next year. I feel like this is a year for Texas to make that jump with their returning talent under Steve Sarkisian.
A lot of people like Texas Tech. Your thoughts about Joey McGuire's second team?
Yes, I did put them fourth in the Big 12, and I do like their quarterback room a lot. Tyler Shuck, he's pretty much won every single game at Texas Tech that he has started and finished. The problem is he hasn't really stayed healthy as much. Then Baron Morton is as good as any backup quarterback in the conference and maybe in the country, because Morton, I thought, was really impressive last year, coming in as a freshman and playing in relief of Tyler Shuck and Donovan Smith, who has since transferred to Houston. But I do like a lot of what Texas Tech returns. They have guys in the trenches, guys like Jalen Hutchings that can really make the defense go like that. They have a good receiver, Jaron Bradley. I like the momentum that Texas Tech built at the end of last year. They finally overcame that hurdle of beating Oklahoma late in the season. They emerged in a lot of close games last year. I thought they were very well coached under Joey McGuire. And then that bowl game against Ole Miss, I couldn't have been more impressed with the team. And Joey McGuire is just a coach that loves to go for fourth downs. He's very aggressive, and I think that style of play exudes confidence. And I'm pretty excited about what Texas Tech can do this year, because I like a lot of their parts that they have back, and I think this league is pretty wide open. I may have voted Texas first, but it's not like I would be shocked if any of the teams I voted 1 through 5 could win this conference, because who thought TCU and Kansas State was going to be meeting at this stadium right here in Arlington around this time last year.
And Steve, I would assume that your 1 through 5 includes Kansas State, a really good team. Obviously, Deuce Vaughn's the obvious loss. Will Howard probably may bring a passing dimension that we haven't seen on this team for a while.
Yeah, Will Howard. I remember last year when Adrian Martinez got hurt, I think after the first possession of that TCU game, Will Howard came in and just established a new sense of verticality in that offense. And I remember watching Will Howard in years prior, and he looked like a completely new quarterback. And I really loved how he ended the season. I mean, Kansas State was really hot to end the year. I don't think Will Howard lost the start until a game where he started and finished until that Sugar Bowl against Alabama. They do lose Deuce Vaughn, who is a huge playmaker on offense, but I think that Kansas State they're a really well-coached team. It's a team that's always going to execute on special teams, get the little things right. I think that they have a really good offensive line. Cooper Beebe, their left guard, was here today. He's all-conference material, and I think that winning in the trenches with him is really going to help Kansas State this year. Then we mentioned Deuce Vaughn leaving, but I think that they reloaded at running back pretty well with Treshaun Ward, who came from a stacked Florida State running back room. So I do think that Kansas State has the talent there to replace Deuce Vaughn, and I think that they can be up at the top of this conference again, because I think Chris Kleiman's built something special here in Manhattan.
Steve Helwick's on the line for us. Underdog Dynasty Hustle Belt on SB Nation. Steve has had a number of assignments throughout the Big 12 over the last several years as well. Steve, we appreciate you stopping by. Is there anything else that you wanted to hit on?
Not necessarily. I would say that my emphasis here was I was just focusing a lot on the newcomers. So Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati. We've talked a bit about them this year, but I'm really interested to see how those games come. We have Texas visiting Houston this year. We have Oklahoma visiting Cincinnati, and I'm really looking forward to how those fan bases grow and how those atmospheres look when some teams that don't traditionally visit these stadiums come to town. So I think that it's going to be an exciting season for those teams, and I'm really excited to see how this league fares this year, because there seem to be so many results possible on the table. I mean, the preseason all-conference quarterback hails from Kansas, Jalen Daniels, and he's an exciting player to watch. I can't wait to watch him. Dylan Gabriel, he's a phenomenal talent at Oklahoma. He stays healthy this year. What can Brent Venables do in year 2 at the helm if he gets his defense right? There's just so many things to watch in this league, and I think this was probably the most compelling conference media day to be at this season.
Absolutely. I feel exactly the same way. I was most anticipating this conference media days for those very obvious reasons. Also, realignment and everything that's on the table for Brett Yormark, and him being as aggressive and outgoing concerning that topic as he is. And then also, as you just alluded to, the release of the schedule, I was the most anticipating and excited about the Big 12 than any other conference in the nation, because I wanted to see how they would deal with the 4 schools and the 2 outgoing schools. And I wanted to see as many matchups, and those are going to be the most intriguing matchups to me, other than obviously whatever's down the stretch that is going to play into the conference championship game. But to see the 4 new schools against the existing schools, and especially Oklahoma and Texas, because as college football fans, we get excited for rare matchups. And of course, it only is reasonable to think Texas and Oklahoma are most likely not going to be scheduling those 4 schools going forward. So I am looking forward to those matchups. And the only one I don't get to see that I really wanted to was a Texas trip to Orlando to take on UCF. I wanted to see that game scheduled.
It happened in 2007, first game ever at the Bounce House. It was, I think, 35-32 was the final score. Texas won with Colt McCoy over UCF. So there's some fun college football trivia or a game to rewatch on YouTube if you want.
There you go. Steve, you're always good for tons of trivia and insight. Obviously, Steve, we appreciate you stopping by, and everybody check out Steve's work on Underdog Dynasty and Hustle Belt on SB Nation. Steve, you're a wealth of knowledge. I can always count on you. Appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
It's our guy, Steve Helwick from SB Nation stopping by. Always, again, a wealth of knowledge on SB Nation, reporting from AT&T Stadium. So we are getting you a number of media that would make it 4 today that are right there at Big 12 Media Days. Look at who's dropping by.
Hey.
Joey, what's going on?
Oh, nothing, man. I get excited this time of year because it's sort of like, to me, it's sort of like the kickoff of college football, right? When all these media days start happening, because after media days it comes back and practice gets more serious. You're getting your team more ready to play, and so I love this time of year. I think it's like my kickoff for me. So
it really is. I went to and covered SEC media days for 7 consecutive years, and we knew once we went to SEC media days, the teams were going to practice right out of that, and it was full bore. Nonstop after that. So it is basically football season at this point, because again, we're going to talk for a couple weeks, and all that talking crammed down our throats is going to go right into fall camp.
Yeah. So Dana Holgerson said something today in an interview, and
Your buddy.
My buddy. And he said, it's, I look to the coaches that can turn it off, for a couple of weeks when they have the downtime, and they can just turn it off and go away. He said that's why he respects, like Bob Stoops so much, because he was just able to just turn it off and walk away, and he's coaching XFL a little bit now, but I mean, that's nothing like coaching a major college football program. So, I think now though, the coaches have that sense of urgency about them right now to get in there and get things going. So I wanted to come in.
Does Neil Brown have any urgency though? That's what I know you want to know.
I'm gonna be honest. I've not been real high on this team this year, but I went back and looked and compared things, and I'm like, okay, who do we have returning this year that we're excited about? Okay, well, we have a couple of players coming back. C.J. Donaldson for one. Extremely excited about seeing that running back, out there on the field. He tore it up last year till he got hurt. And if he can stay healthy this year, he's going to be a 1,000-yard rusher. I really have no doubt. But at the same time, there's not really any names that you're looking at or saying, they've got this guy and they've got that guy. These are the guys you got to watch out for. Sure, we have Zach Frazier, probably one of the best centers in the country, without a doubt. But that's a center, I mean, sure, they're very important, really important, but still not a player like a wide receiver or running back or quarterback that everybody hangs their hats on. So West Virginia don't have any of those. The last time West Virginia didn't have any of those that I can remember was 2016. And that team went 10-3 overall, 10-2, and then lost the bowl game, made them 10-3. Can that be repeated this year? I think it's always a possibility. I don't think it's likely. To be honest, I really don't. But there's always that possibility. So you always have that hope as a fan. You always have, you have that hope whether or not you're a West Virginia fan or not, because you like to see other programs do really well, especially when they're picked at the bottom. Everybody was a Kansas fan last year Remember Kansas starting out 6-0, and all of a sudden the nation was like, Kansas is really good, you know. So everybody likes that underdog and starts rooting for those teams. So if West Virginia can come out, bottom line, there's no doubt about it, they're going to lose game one to Penn State. But let's say they can keep that game competitive. If they can keep that game competitive and keep their heads held high, there's no doubt about it that this team could be a team to be reckoned with in the Big 12. Now, you're talking about the four newcomers. The best team out of the four newcomers to me, I agree with Steve, is UCF. I think they're the team to beat. I've got West Virginia. West Virginia is I think they're the only team playing all four newcomers into the Big 12 conference this year. I think West Virginia will beat three of them. I think they'll beat Houston and BYU and Cincinnati. I don't see us beating UCF. Possible though. So I think that I think it's just an exciting time in the Big 12 right now because you have some teams that are generally mid-range or upper-level teams like West Virginia that are down right now. So, I'm sure Dana Holgerson's coming into the Big 12 with a smile on his face saying, West Virginia's down right now, and what better opportunity do we have to knock them off year one to show I'm a better coach. So, but that's not going to happen, Dana. I apologize. So I wanted to come in real quick and just show these keychains because I know you don't have one yet. So they're 3D. They're 3D printed. They say the voice of college football on them, black and red lettering. I put them in the store for free, and if you'll use promo code football with a capital F, you'll even get free shipping on it. So just go to the store, get you a keychain, check out with that keychain. Use promo code football, free shipping and everything. That's how simple it is. Or you can email Mark at MarkRogersTV at gmail.com. Or you can email me, footballnewshour at gmail.com, and just say, I'd like a keychain. Give us your address, and we'll be happy to mail you one out. So there's three simple ways to get one. And we want to make sure everybody gets one. Now, these are limited. So, if all of a sudden we have 500 people want one all of a sudden, we may not be able to fill that many, but we will fill as many as supplies last on these. So
there you go.
Get it. And it's
get
free.
Your free keychain.
We also have the new coasters right beside of it. Those are extremely nice. I've got a set right here. I've actually got the other set in a box over there, boxed up and ready to ship out to whoever orders it. But
Hey,
I've
Joey,
got
the one thing I've not been able to answer for people is how many coasters do you get?
You get 5.
Okay, 5. I thought it was
coasters.
5 or 6. 5.
Yeah,
got it.
It's a set of 5, and so I have a what I call a not a photocopy. This is an actual copy, but it's made in purple, so I could see what they looked like before I approved production of it and stuff. So I've got purple ones, and the coasters now they're red instead of purple, and the holder on this one that holds the coasters is purple as well. But the whole holder on the other coasters are black, and the coasters are red, and they say, I'm turning it around here, the voice of college football. So we have those in the store as well. Hey, you can get free shipping on these too. Listen, don't check out with the code football and put more than one item in your cart as far as the keychains or these coasters. Keychains and these coasters are only 2 things that are free shipping, and if you put something else in there with it, it's not going to allow you to have free shipping. So on these coasters, though, if you use that same promo code football and check out with just the coasters, you'll get free shipping on them right now. So a couple of new products that we're excited about, but we're really excited about these keychains that everybody can get one for free. Email us, go to the store and check out with one, however you got to do it, however you feel more safe or comfortable doing. And that works for us. So
people asked me for years and years and years for merch. And I wrestled with it. I contacted this company and that company, and I messed this up, and I did this, and I tried this, and I ordered stuff, and I got stuff delivered, and it wasn't the way it was supposed to be. And I messed around with this for years, and I still had people going, when are you going to have some merch? And I was like, you know how many hours I've put into this, and I still don't got it right. Then I found Joey, or Joey found me, or something. We found each other, and Joey's been a godsend.
So we do have some amazing merch, and the best thing about it is we have two lines. So we have top quality and we have good quality. There is no junk in our store. So if you want a T-shirt and you want to pay $21.99, we've got a basic T-shirt $21.99, that you can get. But if you wanted to go a couple of levels up, about 3 levels up, and get our top quality, you can get that for just like $8 more, like $29, I believe it is, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a great thing to be able to have a couple of lines to choose from, and know that either one of them is going to be quality. But if you want a top quality form fitted T-shirt, get the one for $29. If you just want a shirt to, hey, you want a Voice of College Football shirt to run around town then and just have some fun, get the $21 one. That's fine. They're both good quality shirts, but that top quality shirt is going to be a lot better made, obviously. And then we do the same thing on hoodies. We have a very good quality hoodie, a nice thick hoodie, and then we have a top quality hoodie that zips up. And the best thing about that hoodie, scroll up there, Mark, to the other hoodie. There you go. The best thing about that hoodie is zip up, but it's monogrammed. So this monogram says the Voice of College Football. It's not a decal. And $59 for that. But it's the highest quality. So, the thing about that store is what's cool about it is we're a network of college football YouTube channels. And we have Pigskin Pete. We have Traveling Fools, Exploring with Ben and Sam, Twisted Roosters Tailgating. One thing, Joey's Quality Coffee blends in there. Pay no attention to that right now. don't do any pay attention to that right now. We have Eat 'em Dogs, Tide Guy. We have a lot of contributors. We don't have their stores completely built out yet, but we are working on that. So, you can get things from, and not only that, but on the Voice of College Football, we're starting to put team channels in there. So you can get a Miami football at the Voice of College Football T-shirt, or you can get OU football or West Virginia football. We're starting to put the teams in there with USC, WVU. So when we get all the teams in there, it'll be great. Matter of fact, someone just placed an order for a West Virginia football at the Voice of College Football. So yeah, man, that's a big thing. So we're excited about these keychains, those guys. So be sure and grab you one of those right now by the free, because it's just a limited time. And when I say limited, I mean limited. Maybe after this weekend, we don't do it anymore. If we run out of supplies, we stop right then. So get them while it's lasting, completely free. Use promo code football. When you check out only with the keychain. And then if you want to buy something else, go back and get it, because you will not get the free shipping if you add something else to that cart. And I apologize for that, but there's no other way to do it inside the store. We use Shopify to display our products and do ourselves. And they don't have the option for me to just do the free shipping on that one item. So,
John, thank you so much for dropping the link in the chat a number of times. So John has done that for everyone that's asking for the link. It's right there for you.
John, there is Joey Foster Small Batch Coffee. The problem is the store on my end, if someone orders it, it's not letting me know. And I don't know. It's something I've done. It's on Joey. It's not on anything else. And I promise you, I will get that fixed. If you want to go ahead and order it, we'll figure it out and get it fixed. But but yes, anything that you guys would want, and there's discounts too. So read everything when you get there. You'll see that you get discounts for purchasing so many items. You can, you get percentages off. And that stuff's pretty much automatic. So if you purchase 5-6 things or something, you're going to get a discount percentage off of it automatically. So
if our guy Corey Braddock can figure it out, anybody can figure it out. He said he just ordered his. Very simple.
There you go, Corey. Thank you, Corey. So anyway, so yes, I'm very excited. Back to football now. I'm very excited about this year in the Big 12. Big 12 Media Days has got me really fired up, knowing that it's right around the corner and knowing that it's coming up. So I'm sure everybody's that way. I'm sure when Big 10 Media Days was done, John's excited, and next week's Pac-12 Media Day, I'm sure Tim and Tony are going to be excited because it kind of gets you fired up and ready for football. Does me as a fan anyway. So,
Well, Joey, I know that Pac-12 Media Day is going to completely overshadow this, but it's also SEC Media Days next week.
yeah.
From Monday through. So the SEC does it big for 4 days. They take up 4 days, Monday through Thursday next week. Then the Pac-12 is going to try to sneak in and try to shut the place down. I think they're going to Las Vegas before anybody asks them about their media rights deal.
Well, that's going to be the first question asked. If they don't announce something,
that's going to be the last one asked too. I think that's all anybody's going to talk about.
Yeah. So, what's a deadline? Who cares about deadlines, right? So, John says he just got his keychain as well. Good job, John. Ed Rogers saying, will West Virginia make a bowl game? I do believe so. I do. After looking at everything, it's going to be tough. It really is. Because I can pick out 5 wins. It's hard for me to find that 6th one, but will they do it? I think so. And like I say, they could surprise us all because it kind of reminds me of the 2016 team. We just didn't have anybody. I mean, we had good players, but none of them had been heard of. No one was talking about West Virginia at all. We finished the season number 18 in the country and 10-3, So
my predictions around here somewhere. We're releasing our prediction videos, and West Virginia is teetering on bowl eligibility, according to me. Let me see.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
I'm going the other way.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think most people are, especially most media outlets. I mean, we were voted last in the Big 12. I don't know how we voted last in the Big 12. That's behind Houston, Cincinnati. That's behind all the newcomers, everything. That totally shocks me. You've got 4 newcomers coming into a Power 5 conference that do not play Power 5 football week in and week out. Now they're going to do it. If you just look at the rosters, and all you've got to do is like take Houston, Cincinnati, BYU, and UCF. Just look at their rosters. Look at their size of their players, their strengths, things like that. Just look at the size, the overall mass. Are they 6'4", 300-pound linemen? Because that's what you're facing in the Big 12, and they're not. So I do not see why they would pick West Virginia dead last myself, but never know.
Well, even your buddy Dana Hogerson said that he did some research on his roster and they don't stack up. He said flat out, we need to recruit taller players, bigger players, need to bulk up the guys that we've got, or we're not going to be able to stand up at the line of scrimmage.
Right. And that same thing. It's not just on Houston though. That's on UCF and that's on Cincinnati as well. BYU's a little bit bigger, but at the same time, there's a little bit less experience there too. So that's why I think BYU is going to come in struggling. There's not a lot of history between West Virginia and BYU. We've played a few times. I don't think they've ever beat us. They might have one time. There's a lot of history between West Virginia and Cincinnati. Cincinnati is 3-18 all time against West Virginia. They beat us 3 times. UCF, I'm not remembering much history there, and there's no history between West Virginia and Houston. So, these teams coming in, I wish them all the best. Even Houston and Dana Holgerson, I wish them the best. But at the same time, there's going to be a year or 2 adjustment to get used to playing a Power 5 schedule as opposed to a Group of 5 schedule. And something else Dana pointed out in an interview, he said, there's just a huge difference between a Power 5 athletic department and a Group of 5 athletic department. Now we're coming into a Power 5 conference who have these huge athletic departments with help everywhere, employees everywhere, and they don't have those employees. They don't have those people to help them, like a West Virginia or a Kansas State or TCU have. So that's a big difference too. Little things like that are what contribute to success on and off the field. It really is. So you think it's all around, hey, the 5-star talent, you're right. It is a lot around the 5-star talent. You think it's around the coach, you're right. But it's also around that support staff all over the athletic department. And when you do not have that support staff, there's not a winning culture. They're not on the same page. You're bringing in new people. I don't care if it's a cook. I don't care if you're bringing somebody to cook for the football players. They need to get adjusted to the culture of that team, and things, and little things like that can make a big difference. Give you a great example. Everybody wonders, well, how did Rich Rod do so well at West Virginia? Every football player on that team had to know the name of every person within the athletic department program. I'm talking the cook, the assistant cook, anybody that worked within the athletic department. They had flashcards and stuff. He would flash a card to him at practice. That player had to tell them who that was, or they had to run laps. And they built a great culture. Took him some time, right? But he built that great culture. Everybody knew each other, and it kind of grew the program. So that's what's going to have to happen to these new teams coming into the Big 12 now. So.
Joey, whoever said that you couldn't host a show? We just have to wind you up and get you going. And
yeah, I get excited, like I say, this time of year, media days. So, all
by
right,
the way,
Mark.
West Virginia and BYU got together in 2016, and the Mountaineers won a good ball game, 35-32. That's the one West Virginia BYU game. It was only 7 years ago.
Yeah, and I was thinking we played in 2006 or 7 as well.
Wikipedia is telling us just one matchup in 2016. And
Okay.
like we talked about when the Big 12 schedule was released, the Big 12 really missed it when they didn't make Dana and the boys travel to Morgantown.
And they did. And that's not being a Morgantown homer, a West Virginia homer at all. I think there was a lot of money in that game. If they would have brought that game to Morgantown, it would have been primetime television, without a doubt. It would have been a sold-out stadium, without a doubt. And we hold more people than Houston does. It would be huge. Now, not saying they wouldn't be next year, but this year they really missed the mark by not bringing Dana back to Morgantown, in my opinion. It's like Texas and Alabama played last year and they're playing this year. So they go into the SEC, and them two playing each other is not going to be a big deal. But OU and Alabama, when they play in the SEC for the first time, and Oklahoma travels to Alabama, that's going to be such a huge game that it's going to be, that's going to be a huge marquee game that year. So, and if Alabama has to travel to OU, probably still a big game, but probably not as big as it would be if they played at Alabama, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, well, just knowing you and other West Virginia fans, I know what the emotion, the vitriol is against Dana Hogerson, and that's going to be there to a certain extent in future years. But that first year, and if you love college football and you understand the narratives, and we've got our guy Jackson here in particular who loves college football across the board, as we all do, but you don't have to be a Houston or West Virginia fan to know that dynamic between. So that game's going to be of interest outside of those two fan bases to just people like myself that know the history and the storylines. That would have been great. And you make Dana play at Morgantown, but they didn't see that. They didn't go there.
And I'm sure there were some scheduling conflicts or interests, possibly. And possibly they just missed the mark. Maybe in all the ruckus of the shakeup of conferences, they just missed the mark on this one. But they missed a huge opportunity. I realize that they think one of their big games is going to be like Houston and Texas Tech, but they played each other the last couple of years. Texas Tech beat them. This would be the first matchup ever in the history of West Virginia and Houston. It'd be the first time Dana Hogerson's happened to come back to Morgantown. And Neil Brown on the hot seat, needing to win, needing to beat the old West Virginia coach. I mean, you can't write a better story. So They
I
missed
hear
it.
you.
I
Now,
see Jeffrey Foster just ordered his keychain. Thanks, Jeffrey.
very nice. And with all the great questions that have come in, actually, this is the best question I have heard all day. This is the best question. And it would, of course, come from a professional journalist to ask the best question. How do you donate to the Voice of College Football? You talk about a great question. That is the question of the day. Well, we've got Venmo, we've got PayPal, we've got Cash App. Mark Rogers TV is the handle on all of those: Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. And if you want to go to the direct link that's in the description section of all the videos, you can go right to the link: Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. And of course, we've got the super chat available right here as well.
Yep.
Thank you, Corey. Looking out for me.
There you go, Corey. Or you can go and buy a piece of merchandise if you'd like something for your money. Just go and buy you a piece of merchandise. That also supports the
Absolutely.
show. So, and you know what else supports the show? Whether you know it or not, just go and get your free keychain. Use promo code football when you check out. Get free shipping on it and everything. Go to the store, pick you up a free keychain. That supports the show as well. All right, Mark. Well, I'll get out of here. I know you've got another guest coming in here in just a few minutes. So wanted to come in and just talk with you a little bit.
Thanks, Joey.
You're welcome, buddy. Everyone have
see
a great day. Everyone have a great day. Hey, we'll be live on the West Virginia channel tomorrow at 4 o'clock, Mark and I, and we will stream it on the Voice of College Football. It will be probably the last time we stream on the Voice of College Football main channel plus the West Virginia channel. We're going to transition that over to just the West Virginia channel. So it's going to be the last show on both channels. So we appreciate you guys' support. Everyone have a great day. Mark, I'll see you later, buddy.
Thanks, Joey. Appreciate it. Joey Foster, the one and only, and he is responsible for setting all this merchandise up for everyone. So we appreciate Joey. We also appreciate all the contributors that stopped by to talk Big 12 Media Days the last 2 days. Earlier today, Melissa Treebwasser, Frogs Insider, TCU. Also, Jeff Sharon from SB Nation's UCF site. And a few minutes ago, we had Jason Watkins from College Football Hall of Fame podcast on OU, and also Steve Helwick, who covers the entire landscape of college football there at SB Nation with Underdog Dynasty and Hustle Belt. So 4 great interviews thus far. We've got more coming up on Friday, and also here in probably about 15 to 20 minutes, we've got our guy Levi Stevenson heading in from Wide Right Natty Light on SB Nation to talk Iowa State and see what's going on with the Cyclones coming off a not so great 4-8 season with one of the worst offenses in college football. I wanted to address, as well as many of you wanted me to address, the CW agreement with ACC, and we will get to that in just a second. Of course, we want to honor all the super chats that come in. So Pack Daddy, gotta love that name, Pack Daddy, just rolls off the tongue. It's about the alliteration, folks. Pack Daddy, there it is. Thank you so much for the super chat. Pack Daddy, got to say that one more time. Felt I had to pay something for that sweet keychain. We appreciate you. Thank you for that. All right, let's turn our attention to the other college football news that came out today concerning the ACC and the CW. And as soon as this broke, we see a number of college football fans and others who have taken a bit of a shot at the ACC or in defense of the Pac-12, because of course the Pac-12 still without a media rights deal going forward from 2024 on. And of course the Pac-12 has been negotiating with the likes of Ion, Apple, Amazon. And as soon as Ion and the CW and networks like that are mentioned, of course, most of us look at that with a critical eye to say, what is going on here? What is the issue? There's obviously not much worth there. Okay. So let's attack this CW situation and the contract that was announced with the ACC. So here's the difference between the concern that Pac-12 fans should have with their current media rights situation and what the ACC has signed. What would that be? Well, this is not a primary ACC contract, is it? No, this is a secondary, not even a secondary ACC contract. The ACC right now, despite its issues in the future, so I'm not discounting in any way the ACC's issues in the future in regards to holding on to its best football playing schools, even if the grant of rights is firm and solid and completely binding through 2036, the ACC has huge issues past that. And depending on what type of legal battles could ensue before that, they may have serious issues before that. So I'm not discounting that in any way. We have addressed that, discussed it many times here at the Voice of College Football. But in regards to comparing what the Pac-12 is dealing with and what the Pac-12 is negotiating and whom they're negotiating with compared to this deal, let's understand this is not primary to the Pac or to the ACC. Okay. So, for example, on any given Saturday afternoon last fall, in setting up my TV schedule and the myriad of games that I keep track of, well, the ACC is showing its games where? ABC, ESPN. And between those two networks that are, let's face it, in addition to Fox and CBS and coming up this fall, NBC, that's where it's at. That's where 90% of the eyeballs are on ESPN, ABC, which are under the same company, of course, Disney, Fox, CBS. Those four networks own 90% of the TV households and eyeballs for a college football Saturday. Now, somebody's going to go crunch the numbers and find out that it was 88% on November 4th. Okay. So let's understand. So you're going to see on a typical Saturday afternoon, you're going to see with the ACC playing in conference, they're going to play 7 games. Of course, they got 14 teams. They're going to play 7 games in conference. Out of conference, early September, 14 games. That those games are going to be, there's going to be probably 2 to 4 games that are going to be played on ESPN and on ABC. Then they're going to play a triple header most Saturdays on the ACC network. So you're up to the entire conference schedule is going to be played on those 3 networks, excluding, I found this out this past season, I found something called the Bally Sports Network, which actually is a little bit more big time than it sounds because they carry Major League Baseball and a lot of big time sports, the NBA. And basically it's a replacement for the old Fox Sports regional networks. So that's where you could find the bottom rung ACC games this past season. That's where they were placed on Bally Sports Network. So what do we see here? We see this CW contract basically as a replacement for Bally. So we will hit this, and then we want to get back to Big 12 Media Days coverage because we've got our guy Levi standing by. But let me just hit on this real quick. The CW network announced on Thursday it has secured the rights to 50 ACC football and basketball games. So right there, for those people that are trashing the ACC, let's understand when it's announced 50 games, what sport is going to take the majority of those games? So they're not going to be primarily football games. I would bet that that's going to be a 35 to 15 split, something in that range. Here's what you need to know. First ACC football game is going to be September 9th between Pitt and Cincinnati. The CW will broadcast 13 football games. There you go, 28 men's basketball games. That's 41, and 9 women's college basketball games. So 13, I missed it by 2, 13 football games. Okay, we don't need to get into any more details, but we're talking about 13 college football games, ACC football games in the span of a season. So we're not even talking about there's 15 weeks in a season. We're talking about less than one per week. It's not significant. It takes the place of the Bally sports pack with the ACC. All right, let's talk Big 12 once again. We've got our guy Levi Stevenson here from Wide Right Natty Light on SB Nation. Levi, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
How you doing
long
today?
off season. It's It's been a long off season. It's been a boring summer, and just we're ready to get back into college football for sure.
According to your T-shirt there, what is the rallying cry? Oh, beat Texas.
So funny enough, this shirt, I actually got this shirt out of the Iowa State University bookstore back in 2011 when I was a student from the last round of Big 12 realignment of really major shuffling, I guess. So this is actually a well-aged shirt. It aged like fine wine.
Well,
because if you do notice, the S on Texas is a dollar symbol.
Nice. And Iowa State's been very competitive in the series.
Absolutely, especially the last, since about 2014 or so, it's probably pretty close to even, I had to imagine.
Yeah, so let's go to the landscape of the Big 12 before we really grind down to Iowa State, because I found it. Well, I just find this league to be the most fascinating this particular season because of the transition of OU Texas moving on. And I desperately got what I wanted. I didn't want to see a clean transition. OU Texas out a particular season, then the other four coming in the next season.
Yeah,
I wanted to see overlap,
awkwardness.
awkwardness.
1 year really messy overlap.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got it. The only game I didn't get was a Texas trip to Central Florida. I just thought that might be difficult for them, kind of a tricky spot.
Yeah, that would be a weird one. We did get a weird Oklahoma trip to Cincinnati, so that's good.
Yeah.
I was really just looking forward to sending them on the dumbest road trips you can think of. That's really what I was looking forward to with Oklahoma and Texas, and Oklahoma taking a trip to Cincinnati. Not even remotely a dig at Cincinnati, but Oklahoma taking a trip to Cincinnati is kind of a weird one. So I was happy to see that. I would like to also see like Texas have to go to BYU or something like that, which they did not that long ago, but that was for just a random out of conference when BYU was really, really good.
Yeah, there were two just massive point totals put up by the likes of Taysom Hill and the Cougars against Texas, just completely embarrassed them. I think 66 was the spot one of those two seasons.
Was that right at the end of the Charlie Strong era, I think? Or was that right at the beginning of Tom Herman?
Yeah, and like 8 million yards rushing.
Yeah.
Against a bunch of Texas defenders that didn't look like they wanted to be there.
Maybe that was the same year that Paul Rhodes team took out Texas 24-0 too. I think that might be the same year. Because I think Texas opened the season and then Iowa State beat them 24-0 later in the year. Yeah. With Joel Lanning at quarterback.
Yes, the linebacker.
Yeah, the middle linebacker.
that
moonlighted as a quarterback for the first 4 years
phenomenal.
of his career. Gosh, man. Can you even believe that season was 6 years ago now?
Yeah, I guess to a lot of Iowa State fans, 2020 is starting to feel like a long time ago. 2020. That was
well, and like it's hard to believe too that Matt Campbell's in his 8th season in Ames, which seems hard to believe, but it is. And yeah, so 2020, the phenomenal season, one of just housed Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. Like it does feel like forever ago, unfortunately, but.
And I was going to go Big 12 first, but we'll start Iowa State first because we're there. We're there.
We're here.
2012. And the reason I bring up that feeling so long ago is because you know where I'm going, because Matt Campbell was the wonder child of college football at that point. Like he's the guy, he's the up and comer. Look at what he's done here. This is a remarkable miracle type job. And winning 7 and 8 games in the regular season each season. That, of course, a 9-3 campaign, even during a COVID year in which they lost a couple games. So, but then the point there, and I was making it on a consistent basis, was, is this going to continue, or are they leveling off? Or and I think that there should be a little bit of grace out there.
I just wrote an article about this yesterday about how you convert the early momentum into long-term success, because it's a tricky, because Paul Rhodes had early success, Dan McCarney had early success. Iowa State coaches have had success early on, but it's always tricky to turn that into something later down the road. And now, granted, Matt Campbell is working with a totally different, basically an entirely different university than what Paul Rhodes even had to work with as far as facilities and resources and things like that. I mean, Iowa State has some of the best facilities, arguably the best new facilities in the new Big 12. We'll have the biggest stadium They will still have the second biggest stadium in the new Big 12, but I think BYU's is a little bit bigger. But they've got and they've got a lot more resources available to them. The overall talent level of the roster is much better than it was with Paul Rhodes. But we saw that the first half decade, 6 years or whatever, the Matt Campbell era, that was really, really good. And like you said, he was the darling of college football. Everybody was, he was the headline for a long time, and just every single possible job opening you can think of, he was being connected to it. I think part of it is that the national college media has a sort of obsession with young hotshot coaches and trying to vault them up to bigger schools. I think there's just kind of there's this obsession at the national level with that, where reality really isn't like that as much, where every young coach is just trying to job hop and jump up and jump up and jump up. Some are like that, absolutely. Cliff Kingsbury comes to mind. But like there's plenty of examples of that happening, but it's not a universal thing. So part of that was a product of that kind of that built-in obsession with the young hotshot coaches. But part of what I talked about in my article that I wrote for the site, everyone wants to go check it out on widerightnightlight.com. But basically, we're getting to that point now where this is where the real kind of grind starts when you're talking about coaching at a school like Iowa State, because like I said, you can change scheme, you can do things a little bit differently that sparks a big turnaround for a few years, or in Matt Campbell's case, 5 or 6 years, a nice, good, extended kind of honeymoon phase. But now we're getting to the point where, we're now 2 full seasons removed from the Fiesta Bowl win. And in between there, you had a season where there was a humongous expectations, borderline dark horse college football contender type expectations, and they just didn't get there. They had trouble closing out games, trouble winning close games, some bad turnover luck and things like that. But just didn't live up to expectations. And last year we knew it was going to be a little bit rough. We knew there was a big roster turnover, especially on the offensive side of the ball. It's hard to lose Brock Purdy, Breece Hall, Charlie Kohler, Chase Allen, and all those guys, and try to replace them. You can only Moneyball only goes so far. But even last year, I think there was still a general feeling there was a lot left on the table. And really and truly, they were 4-8, but truly they were 1 missed catch against Texas and 1 missed catch against Kansas State from being a bowl team again, despite having one of the worst offenses in college football. Now, part of that is a credit to John Haycock for putting together yet another outrageously good defense. But they were still in a down rebuilding year. Iowa State was still 2 plays away from a bowl game, and maybe a few more plays away from 7 or 8 wins, or a mediocre offense away from 7 or 8 plus wins, just because the program is just in a totally different place than where Matt Campbell is. But Iowa State is no longer in the headlines. They're no longer the kind of the darling of college football. They're no longer the shooting star that's kind of piercing the college football sky anymore. So you can't really ride that momentum. There isn't any way you can't pitch to recruits. Oh, we're going to change the culture. We're going to do this like he did to Dave Montgomery and Deshaunte Jones and Mike Rose and all these guys that he had early on, these early recruits that he had. You can't preach the changing the culture thing, because he's been here 8 years. If the culture's not here, it's not getting here. and which it is here. I mean, see, this is the problem with Corey watching the stream, is that Iowa fans are so used to nobody caring about their program that they hear language about people caring about their program, and there's a short circuit, and they just don't know what's happening. Because if someone is talking about scoring points, something doesn't fire off in there, and they're just like, what the hell are points? So, but anyways, they're just like punts, right? Punts. You're talking about punts. We have to win 21 punts to 7 punts. So anyways, now that they're out of that, they can't ride that initial momentum of that early success and trying to build recruiting classes and trying to just the publicity that these smaller programs you can't just buy it. You have to get in, you have to kind of capture it. And I would say did a fairly good job of that, of turning that into recruiting classes. So, instead of being in the bottom 2 or bottom 3, like they consistently were with Paul Rhodes, now they're pretty consistently, 4 or 5 and, in the 5-6-ish range, like right about middle of the pack of the conference is where they're pretty consistently ending up in recruiting rankings now. And the average prospect ranking is much, much higher than it used to be. So the overall talent level on the team is much better. They've done a fairly good job collecting that, but how do you make sure that the train keeps moving forward and you don't see a plateau and it doesn't get stuck in the mud. You got to figure out how to do that. And we saw what appears to be a very, very good attempt to try to do that, to try to shake things up and to try to keep things moving forward by replacing a huge portion of the offensive staff in the offseason. I don't know if you were going to ask about that or not. If I'm
I was going to get there.
segues.
I have not seen the name Nate Shieldhouse since his days running
Illinois.
at quarterback for Illinois. So he comes in.
He's been the receivers and or running backs coach at Iowa State for, I think this is 6 years now or something. He's been actually in the program since like 2016 as a position coach. But then with Tom Manning being let go this past off season, and deservedly so, Nate Shieldhouse is brought in. He's always been thought of as kind of an up and comer. He started at Iowa State when he was 25, and so he's now just like, I think he's 32 now. So he's very young. Widely considered to be a very bright mind. And, if anyone ever remembers watching him at Illinois, a very exciting player, good, really, really fun dual threat quarterback. The idea is that, his play style could also, translate into an offensive coordinator style, where it's more exciting, a little bit more aggressive, maybe some, a bit more aggressive passing game that is further down the field than 3 yards. Because the running joke last year was that every I would say just ran short crossing routes every play, basically ran drag routes. And that's why Hunter Deckers led the Big 12 in attempts, completion percentage, but also was like 8th in total yards or something like that. He wasn't Corey. Yeah. So was the pretty word excitement around our program? Is that the one you were unfamiliar with, Corey?
I think it was darling. You used the word darling. I went with Wonder Child.
To be fair, I'm not the one that used Wonder Child first. That was you, Mark. I just was playing off of it. But anyways, so it's Nate Shieldhouse is generally thought, like, the idea is that he's going to run a little bit more aggressive offense that pushes the ball down the field a little bit more, things like that. I wouldn't expect to see a dramatic change from a X's and O's standpoint. You'll still see a lot of, the 2-3 tight end. I don't know if you see 3 tight end sets as much, but 2 tight end sets. You'll see pre-snap motion, stuff like that. The idea is you'll probably still see plenty of that type of stuff. So it'll sort of on its face look a little bit like Tom Manning's offense. But the idea is that it's supposed to be that it should be a more aggressive offense, partially because they played ultra conservative, about as conservative as you possibly could last year, and it was really bad. So there's a certain point where you might as well roll some dice because it can't get any worse.
Yeah, and
if it was any worse, they'd make us take the state off the front of the jersey and just have Iowa there.
Ooh. Have you been using that one, or did that just roll out?
That was the first time. I believe that's the first time that's been recorded. So
just to pack that one away. That's good. I feel honored to have that unveiled here at the Voice of College Football first and foremost. You do, despite the record being what it was this past season, some of the better players under Matt Campbell and in the history of this program, talking about Xavier Hutchinson, one of the great playmakers in the history of the program on offense, Will McDonald on defense, one of the great pass rushers, and also MJ Anderson. I don't know where you're going to find your pass rush, or does John Haycock, just like Phil Parker at Iowa, if we want to flip the script and give that kind of hate to the Iowa Hawkeyes, we've got to flip the script and give that kind of love to the Iowa defense.
Yeah, no, I see, and that's the one thing that, like, when I've been doing kind of making the rounds on various Big 12 podcasts the last couple of weeks and stuff like that, that's the one thing I always, and because one of the points that we've been talking about too is Iowa State. If there's one possible criticism you could ever have of John Haycock, it's a extremely minor one, but it's that his defenses probably could force more turnovers. They generally haven't needed that to be really good, but they could force more turnovers. And that's one thing he said. And sometimes it's hard to not force very many turnovers when you have to look across the state at an Iowa defense that is extraordinarily good at turning people over and basically making that their offense. Cooper DeJean is their best offensive player too, which is really extraordinary. But so I'm perfectly willing to compliment Iowa where I believe it's deserved. But usually I just don't believe it's deserved. Yeah. So, anyways, as far
So
as the
my
pass
point
rush
being,
goes,
with two of the
pass
best
rush,
pass
back
rushers
to the pass
gone,
rush here.
you know, just
this
John
isn't just the
Haycock,
Levi
he
Zings
could,
Iowa. This isn't
know.
just the Levi Zings Iowa hour here. Though I'm more than happy to do that. The nice thing is that with the way the rotations and the defense work, is there's lots and lots of bodies that go in now. You have 22 to 26 guys are playing every single game. So even backups to Will McDonald and MJ Anderson were getting plenty of snaps. So it's not like you're just throwing in a total newbie in there. One of the big guys in there that immediately I think is going to step up and be really, really good right off the bat, Tyler Nyedem. He's a young guy. He came in, plays really well. He's a very physically imposing guy. I think that's a guy that he's going to get there and have a really, really big chance to do something. Jefferson Adam has been in the program for a while. Samuel Same is a true freshman that probably has a chance to get some snaps early on. Joey Peterson, if you remember, his older brother, Zach Peterson, played at Iowa State for a long time, was a very productive defensive end. It's his younger brother, Joey. That's another guy with a really good chance to make a good impact on the line. Like I said, a few young freshmen as well. But and then Dominique Orange in the middle on the defensive tackle, I think he's going to be a breakout star. I mean, I think he's really got a chance to be one of the best defensive tackles in the Big 12 next year. And if there's anything that's taught me up to this point with, you think you lose Mike Rose and Jake Hummel and the linebacking core is going to go to shit. Well, it was still really good. That it didn't fall off at all, even though you lost two of the best linebackers in school history. I have been given no reason whatsoever to believe that losing a star player is really that much of an issue for Eli Rashid and Tyson Veit and Deion Broomfield and John Haycock. I have been given no reason to doubt them up to this point. We know that there are some really, really nice, talented players in that room now. So it's just a matter of seeing what they do when they step up and seeing how that is. So I have no concerns whatsoever on the defensive line as far as like losing MJ Anderson and Will McDonald goes. On offense, it's a different dynamic because Xavier Hutchinson, for my money, this might be controversial, but if you were to force me to choose between having Allen Lazard, college Allen Lazard, not pro Allen Lazard, college Allen Lazard, Xavier Hutchinson and Hakeem Butler, I might take Xavier Hutchinson just because he's so well-rounded. He's such a polished route runner. Just his best talent was getting open. He just got open. When he came to Iowa State, my player comp for him was just a guy that he plays similarly to was Justin Blackman, and I'm very proud of that analysis because it turned out to be absolutely true. Where both guys were just their best thing was they just got open and they made catches, they made plays. So then that was a double-edged sword a little bit at times for last year because Xavier Hutchinson was a guy. If you needed a first down, he was your dude. You're just going to go. You can throw it to him. He's going to get 16 to 20 targets a game. He's going to catch probably 12 of them, and that's fine. He's going to be a really high-volume receiver that's going to do what you need him to do. However, that also meant that they threw to him a lot, and the passing game became very, very one-dimensional. Whereas if teams really focused on shutting down Xavier, there was not a lot of else that was going to help him out. I mean, Demetri Stanley had some nice games. Jalen Knoll he's talented, but sometimes inconsistent. By not having Xavier Hutchinson, theoretically, they should have to spread the ball around quite a bit more. They should have to find a few receivers that they can rely on and another tight end or something like that and spread the ball around a little bit more and be more varied in the passing game, which should help shake things up a little bit. Whereas they were just, if they got desperate and they needed a few yards, they just ran Xavier Hutchinson on a drag route and just hope he did something. Sometimes that worked, and sometimes he's still only one guy playing against 11 on the defense. I mean, he can only do so much on his own. So, love Xavier Hutchinson. I think him leaving is going to force the offense to spread the ball around a little bit more. So I think I think there could be a net positive. Now, obviously, that's dependent on receivers stepping up. Like Jaden Higgins is a transfer from Eastern Kentucky. I've heard tons and tons and tons of good things about him. As far as I understand, the expectation is he's going to be the number one receiver because he's had that good of a spring and a summer. He's a guy that I think will probably play a lot. Jalen Knoll will start in the slot. Demetri Stanley on the outside, I assume. So those guys got to step up for sure. The offensive line's got to be better. Oh, the offensive line. And then the quarterback situation, they've got to figure out whoever is going to be the long-term guy. They've got to figure that out. That's how you replace Xavier Hutchinson. You moneyball this thing. You recreate him in the aggregate. Instead of having one guy get 12 catches on 16 targets, have 3 guys get 4 catches on 6 targets.
Yeah, you brought up the quarterback battle, and while Hunter Decker's throwing 19 touchdowns at Iowa would be like almost record book
Oh, he'd be a
type of
Heisman contender.
yeah. 19 touchdowns and 14 picks at Iowa State.
Not
There's
great.
a bit of a competition. I see a list of like, Jarrell Brock and Eli Sanders and Cartavius Norton. Is there a true quarterback battle here?
Those are all running backs.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's bad on my part. Is
So
there
honestly,
true
if
quarterback?
Cartavius Norton is starting at quarterback, something has gone terribly, terribly wrong.
There's been an issue. Nix that, everyone.
So
Right
right now,
my,
the main three dudes are Hunter Deckers, JJ Cole, and Rocco Becht. JJ Cole is the second highest rated recruit in program history. He's an Iowa State legacy. He's from Ankeny, which is just 10 minutes away from Ames. He's big, elite 11 guy, huge frame, big time arm. From everything that I've heard is that because he came in the spring, he graduated high school early, came in the spring, was here for spring practice. From everything I heard is that he's still a true freshman, so there's a transition period. But from what I've heard is that all the things you hope a true freshman quarterback is doing to prepare himself for a successful career, he has checked all of those boxes. Like I said, Will at Notre Dame. JJ Cole consistently was one of the top rated quarterbacks in the Elite 11. This was an Elite 11 that included all like the top few guys that are going. I like Dylan Raiola and stuff like that were in there. And I think JJ Cole, like most of the week, was getting like performer of the day and stuff like that. I think he got like second overall or something like that in the overall competition. But I mean, he was one of the best quarterbacks in that competition. He's a fabulous passer of the football. We're going to see what that looks like long term. Hunter Deckers is he's got plenty of arm talent. Sometimes doesn't seem to have a really good understanding of defenses. He doesn't have a great understanding of reading defenses and learning where to fit passes and where not to. Partially because he's got tremendous arm talent, but that gets him in trouble sometimes. And put it this way, all three quarterbacks, JJ Cole, Hunter Deckers, Rocco Becht, you would prefer not to play JJ Cole because he's a true freshman, and the idea of playing a true freshman against Iowa in his second ever college football game is not super enticing, considering how good Iowa is at forcing turnovers and how famously good freshman quarterback are at avoiding turnovers. But so you'd like to not throw him out there against the Wolves like that, but the issues for Iowa State's offense did not come from the quarterback position. They originated on the offensive line. There was a lot of injuries in the running back room and the tight end room. The quarterback position was like concern number 4 of the offense. If the offensive line is better, and the running backs stay healthy, and the wide receivers are doing their job, any of those 3 guys is capable of leading an offense that is better than last year's. That's the best way I can describe it right now. I'm not sure if it matters a ton who starts, because it can't really get any worse than it was last year, and the offense getting significantly better is really not dependent on any of them.
So in a conference where Texas is clearly the best team on paper, of course, they've got to prove it, and they never do.
Paper, yeah.
But at the same time, they are the most talented team, and I would argue that they are the best team in a conference against its competition, meaning there are better teams across the country, but Texas has a bigger gap between them and second place and so forth. Not, again, that they can't blow it.
Right. Well, and the thing is, Texas is finally starting to build that program the way it probably should have been built, like the last decade, where Steve Sarkisian has started to build that team from the inside out, from the offensive line and defensive line out, which is what should have been happening this whole time. It's what Tom Herman should have done. It's what Charlie Strong should have done. Steve Sarkisian is building it the right way. As an X's and O's guy, I'm not sure how much of a believer of Sarkisian I am, but his roster construction is much better than Tom Herman's was and Charlie Strong's were. So you're right that Texas is the most talented team on paper, and this Texas team probably has a higher floor than a lot of the previous Texas teams we had, where the offensive line has lots of issues and they could all just come falling apart, because that doesn't work. Their offensive line should be pretty good. So the floor for this Texas team is higher than it has probably been in previous years.
And I'm sure you would agree, after Texas, and even including Texas, this is a more bunched up competitive conference than any other in college
yeah.
football. It's not even close. Like if West Virginia, if people consider West Virginia to be the worst team in the league, if they played and beat Texas this season, it would be
nobody would be surprised.
No, it wouldn't be some huge surprise. It's not like Rutgers beat Ohio State or Vanderbilt beat Alabama. Like the competitiveness of the conference for people that truly love college football and aren't just hyper focused on the playoff. This is the most enjoyable league, top to bottom, to watch.
And I think it will be even after Texas and Oklahoma are gone. It still will be.
Oh, it's going to be even more.
Even tighter. It'll be even tighter.
Yeah.
Where I mean, on any given year, half the conference will have a pretty decent shot, or well, actually, probably 80% of the conference will have a relatively decent shot at pushing for a title game berth.
So that said, Levi, what's a successful season for Iowa State
this year? A bowl game. I would say a bowl game because I mean Iowa State got an unbelievably terrible draw for a schedule. Iowa State is one of the. I think Phil Steele had us ranked as the third hardest schedule in college football this year. I mean, we got an awful schedule. We have to. Let's see. I'll go through it a little bit. We've got to go down to Oklahoma. Then we've got TCU at Cincinnati, at Baylor, Kansas, at Utah, Texas, at Kansas State. That's a terrible schedule. It's a really hard schedule. There are 6 wins to be had in that schedule. I think like Cincinnati, BYU, Oklahoma State, Kansas. Those are all definitely winnable games, for sure. And the other ones can be, they can win them, but they're not going to be favored or anything like that. It's because to get to a bowl game, we're going to have to see some improvement on the offensive line. We're going to have to see some better better game management in close game scenarios. Somebody is going to have to step up and be have to be a competent quarterback. Even if it's later in the season, like even if it starts out at Hunter Deckers and he struggles a little bit and then JJ Cole takes over and he's really good, something like that, whatever that looks like. A bowl game signifies that we haven't lost our momentum. A bowl game says, okay, we understand we're still in a rebuilding year, but even in a rebuilding year, we can still be competitive and we've still got a good trajectory forward. So a bowl game with a positive outlook on the offensive line and quarterbacks positions would go a very long ways towards making basically every Iowa State fan happy.
I'm going to make broad narratives that people are going to get pissed off about, especially if they root for the Pac-12 or the ACC. But those are the 2 worst conferences, and it's difficult to defend those 2 conferences. The Pac-12 has been awful forever. They did have a bounce back year to a certain extent, but still, that was raising the floor for them. It still wasn't a good conference.
Right.
They had 5 pretty good teams at the top. The ACC's out-of-conference record has been deplorable for about 5 years. The SEC's the SEC. It's the best. The Big Ten is a money and popularity and resource giant that matches the SEC, but they haven't done it on the field outside of a couple of
They're a
elite
close
teams.
Second place, but an obvious second place.
Yes. So I place right now the Big 12 right there. Not that can't change once they start playing it again. I think the Pac-12 has the best quarterback play in college football. But anyway, the Big 12 is the oddball in terms of being able, you can argue Big 12 in either direction. You can take shots at the Big 12, or you can argue the legitimacy of the Big 12. And both are not easy to do, but there's legitimacy in both directions.
Yeah, so it's an interesting, and I think that's what Brett Yormark, the new commissioner, has done very well, is that he doesn't have some unrealistic expectation that the Big 12 is going to try to pass the Big 10 and the Big SEC. It's just not going to happen, and that's okay. Being third place is totally fine, and being a very clear and obvious third place is better. And I think the Big 12 is very clearly positioned to be the third best conference in the country after the Big Ten and the SEC for the next 15, 20 years and beyond. Because the ACC got scared, locked themselves in a panic room with a bunch of perishable foods, and decided to not set the door to open for another 15 years. It's going to be really bad. It's going to get so much worse for them in the next 10 years. And Pac-12, who I don't even know if they're going to exist in 5 years, much less 10. So the Big 12 is in a really good position. It is an odd duck because for a long time, like schematically, like the actual product on the field, the Big 12 has been a little bit of the kind of the cutting edge as far as what the new trend in football is going to be. They were the first ones by far to do the air raid offenses, which are now everywhere. They're so everywhere that Nick Saban has run one for 5 years now. And Big 12 has been doing that for 10 or 15 years. They've been running air raid offenses, and then they slowed down. And then Iowa State brought in the 3-3 stack, or popularized it, I should say. They didn't invent it, but they popularized the 3-3 stack, and now everybody runs that, and that started to slow the air raid offenses down. Well, there's not many teams in the Big 12 that run, like basically nobody in the Big 12 runs a Mike Leach style air raid where it's pass, and then like 5 running attempts throughout the game. Nobody runs that anymore. The passing games still have a lot of air raid concepts in them because they're just efficient. They're just efficient passing concepts, but nobody's running an air raid offense as people kind of think of it, where it's just passing every play. Nobody runs that anymore at all. Even Texas Tech has a power run game involved and stuff like that. I mean, everybody does that. And the Big 12 has now adjusted to being almost a defense-heavy league with some really good running games and then some just otherwise efficient but not necessarily ultra-prolific passing attacks or something like that. And now we're starting to see the rest of college football start to work its way back around, where it just kind of goes in cycles. And the Big 12 just seems to be this kind of, like I said, the kind of this cutting edge of what is the direction that college football is going. Lots of people do things based on their own rosters and whatever else, what they want to do. But it's pretty inarguable that Big 12 pioneered both the air raid offense and the 3-3 stack, which has now taken over the NFL, both of them. And so it's always been a little bit of an odd duck. It's a little bit of an odd duck geographically too, where you've got a team in Florida and one in Utah. And that's by design though, because of Brett Yormark wanted to get in every time zone. He's in 3 of them now. And I believe probably pushing pretty hard for a 4th. And so that's intentional. It's kind of geographically all over the place. It's got a lot of weird personalities and dynamics involved. You got a bunch of old land grant schools. You've got UCF, which is a relatively young school that has a huge alumni base. You've got tiny private schools. You've got BYU out there, which is kind of its own deal. You've got this. It's a really funky group of personalities and fan bases that have lots of different fun dynamics, and they do lots of different things. Like you said, if you truly love college football and don't just hyper focus on the top 10 in the college football playoff, the Big 12 is a deeply interesting and fun conference to follow, and it will be for the next 10 years or more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I couldn't be happier with the direction of the Big 12. I mean, yeah, you can say, well, it'd be nice to go try to poach Colorado and Arizona and Utah and whatever. Can you even imagine Utah and UCF being in the same conference? Oh, gross. But grabbing Colorado and Arizona and bringing them in, phenomenal. The Big 12 is already an outrageously good basketball conference, and that would totally just send it. I mean, this isn't obviously not a basketball podcast, but the gap between Big 12 in basketball and every other conference is bigger than the gap between the SEC and everything else in college football. It's not even the same conversation how far ahead Big 12 basketball is. And they're talking about adding UConn. There was a conversation about Gonzaga for a while. And that's an interesting media rights thing that's going to come up at some point. Is there's talk about trying to split off football and basketball, just because the basketball product with Big 12 is just so good. That there's talk about trying to have a deal with that and a deal with football. The football deal will obviously be bigger because it's football, but it's an interesting dynamic. The Big 12 may be the first power conference to split off the media rights for its football and basketball. It's in there, and that's okay. It's okay to be different, because Brett Yormark is doing what he needs to do to keep the Big 12 different, keep it interesting, and keep it going.
We are going to keep this response by Corey suspenseful, because
I don't even know what he's reacting to.
I don't know exactly either. It might be the comment about the Big 12 being so much better than everybody else in basketball, but I don't watch basketball. I haven't. I used to used to cover it.
And that's fine.
But
and Corey and I can jaw about basketball.
But I was just going to say, I don't. So I've got no response there except for what I hear. And what I hear is that for the past roughly 5 years, the Big 12 has been the best basketball conference. So if you add UConn and Gonzaga, good Lord.
About a decade. I mean, adding Gonzaga and UConn. I mean, they added Houston, who's a top 5 team last year. Cincinnati's a historically good program. BYU's a historically good program. The basketball conference is outrageous. I wish they would stop adding good teams because I like winning games.
Well, Levi, we appreciate you being here, and it reminds me seeing Corey's handle that we would love to have you on the Iowa show here soon to preview. Of course, do a long site preview of the game, but also I know Corey wants to hit you up on some topics that touch both Iowa and Iowa State.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Good stuff. Levi, thanks for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. And we want everyone to check out Levi's work at SB Nation, Wide Right, Natty Light. Is there anything there you want to highlight? We want to make sure we give you your due there.
Yeah, we got our YouTube channel. We've got a Discord that's pushing 900 members now. It's a lot of fun. We've got the links in our pinned tweet. It's obviously it's a lot of Iowa State fans, but there are fans from every school in the conference. We've got non-sports channels, like people talking about pro sports or talking about video games or hobbies or history. We've got a lawn and garden channel. We do all sorts of fun stuff. It's just a really fun community. We've got a link in our Twitter description too. It's a lot of fun if you're just looking for a really fun Discord server to be in. We've got do some Twitch streams and stuff like that. But like I said, I guess I referenced it a little bit earlier, but if you want, you can kind of go check out my article I wrote yesterday on the site. It's called "On Entering the Most Important Stretch of the Matt Campbell Era," and it is talking about exactly what Mark asked her about earlier, which is converting that early momentum that Iowa State had with Campbell and turning that into long-term sustainability and turning it into something where the program can consistently be bowl game or better every single year, as opposed to just, falling back to 4 wins when something's not going well. But yeah, that's kind of the main thing, I suppose.
So we have dropped the link in the chat, so we know everyone's lazy. So all you have to do is grab the link. It's right there in the chat, and go right to Wide Right Natty Light and check out what they have concerning Iowa State athletics.
That's the one I just did. We just did Austin just did a mailbag. That the nightcap there that you see right there is a show that we do on Tuesday nights. It's kind of our version of a late night show. It goes live 8:00 Central Time on YouTube. That's a good time. We interviewed the Cincinnati guy last week. We've got Houston this week, and then we'll have the Gambling Gauchos from Texas Tech in 2 weeks. So
very good. We're already getting a groundwell of support for us.
Casey, I'm more than happy to go on Corey's show if he's ready for that smoke. That's the problem here. Is that Corey, because Iowa State was 4-8 and had one of the worst offenses in college football, and somehow went to Iowa and beat them in Kinnick Stadium. So
this is true, and
after we
also had a better offense.
Came on this program and both predicted that Iowa was going to win that game, and the damn Cyclones went in and they done did it.
They did, breaking a 6-game losing streak
in the worst way possible.
Something in that range.
Just a disgusting football game that I would never recommend anybody ever watch again. But honestly, that's just how Cyhawk is. They're just horrific football games that should not be shown on public television before the hours of 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. because it's not appropriate for children.
Well, I'm kind of warped because I grew up in the late 70s and early 80s, and so I'm used to that kind of football, and I can watch that all day. That's fine. 13 to 9.
And truly, the sickos among us can get into that kind of thing. So it's objectively a fun time just because of how goofy and stupid it is. But that's just Cyhawk football, and it's just a good time. That's why they play it every year, because it's a lot of fun. We talk noise to each other.
Levi, thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate you hanging out.
Thanks for having me. I always like coming on this.
Talk to you soon.
It was fun. Thank you.
Levi Stevenson, we dropped the link there in the chat. Join Levi and, again, Wide Right Natty Light, and even get some background on why they named it that. There you go. There's kind of a Florida State connection to a certain extent in regards to missed kicks, blowing big games, or relatively big games per Iowa State. Appreciate everybody being here for our Big 12 media coverage. Again, check out the previous live stream because Melissa Triebwasser and Jeff Sharon delivered definitely on that live stream. Big 12 talk across the board. We know that we're in need of Big 12 fans here at the Voice of College Football. So we are going to go full throttle on all the conference media days, as of course we tackle the SEC and the Pac-12 next week. And then it's the ACC and the Big Ten the final week of July, right here at the Voice of College Football. Coming up next, we've got a South Carolina Clemson live feed. You talk about rivals that get together on this one. Clemson with our guy Jordan Bowman and Tiger Paw Craven, and Twisted Rooster, South Carolina. It's a Palmetto State battle. They wanted to get together and mix it up on South Carolina and Clemson. That's coming up at 7 Eastern time. I don't even know what time it is. Yes, we have a freestyle, freewheeling program schedule here at the Voice of College Football, but it all just kind of works together. So keep it right here. I will meanwhile kill a fly that's been driving me nuts for the last 20 minutes, and keep it right here at the Voice of College Football. And we will see you on Friday. In the meantime, you're in the right spot. Oh, one other programming note, 9 Eastern tonight, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, the debut of Tim's call-in show, whatever we're calling it, over on the USC channel. I can't keep track of all the program names, but over on the USC channel, call-in show, and it's a collaboration with some of the top USC sites. So you'll want to check that out at 9 Eastern time, 6 Pacific, right here at the Voice of College Football. See you on Friday.